Mandatory. Listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, we are back with back with another episode of Mandatory Listening. This is episode
5.
5. Yeah, episode 5.
Look at us.
Look at us, man. 5 episodes in. I like how every episode we're just celebrating making another episode. We didn't think we would make it this far.
I mean, I thought we would make it this far, but not in this amount of time.
Yeah, me neither. Like, I feel like we were like eased our way into it. Now the posting, posting is like a little scatter, but the recording, we are on deck with the recording. So
absolutely, yeah, we've been really, really on schedule with that, which has been fun. One
thing I want to address before we start is that I think that a good thing that I like about our friendship is we have like accountability. So like if you mess up, then I'm like, bro, what are you doing? And if I mess up, I'm like, bro, you're like, wait.
We really know this accountability thing.
Yeah,
like,
accountability. And then but the thing that I like about it is that like it forces you to be accountable for yourself. So if you're like, I messed up, I don't have to wait for you to say it. I'm like, you know what, Dan, I'm sorry for this. This was my fault. Totally wrong. You know what I mean? Here's one of those moments, man. I'm totally off base. It was your birthday on July 2nd, and I didn't even hit you with a text. I knew that's what you were going to say. I didn't hit you with any. I just was on 4th of July, just having a ball. I was just on the 4th of July, just enjoying life, just thinking to myself, wow, my friend's birthday. I'm glad I don't have a friend's birthday that was 2 days ago that I missed.
Right.
Yeah. So you know what? I just wanted to tell you in front of our huge listening audience that I'm sorry. I appreciate your birthday. I appreciate you, and I'm glad we're doing this together.
Man, thank you.
25, right?
25. And I was talking to my parents about this. That 25 feels different, like
it does, man.
It's a real number.
Listen. The listen audience knows this too. Like episode 1, you had a T-shirt on. Episode 5, you have a shirt on. You got dressed.
Well,
you're a man.
I mean, episode 6 probably back to T-shirt. This is just a
no, man. Listen. Keith Brown said it. You got to wear a shirt with a collar. I like it.
Man, the other thing that's going on is I'm trying different things with my hair because I have long hair.
Yeah.
And so I have this.
I'm down with this, bro.
I have this straggler back here that's
I like
really,
the straggler. No. Keep the straggler, bro. You know what I think it is? Like, for most people that don't know, if you haven't been listening to the podcast, me and Daniel are both natives of Nashville, Tennessee. We're both natives of Nashville, Tennessee, the greatest city on earth.
That's right.
And I'm really feeling the like Nashville hipster producer vibes. Like you're in the studio, you got the one
drums
strand.
Behind me.
You got the drums behind you. You got the one strand, really expensive shirt. You know what I'm saying? You probably got that, from who knows where you got that. Don't you?
I literally got this at Goodwill.
You can't tell them, bro. You can't tell them. Like, this is Gucci season.
When I edit this, like, you'll just see the video of me saying Goodwill, and it's obvious I'm saying Goodwill, but it'll say, I'll like overdub it, say Gucci.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I have to do.
Listen, the funny thing about editing, because Daniel's going to start editing some podcasts, is that, so I just want to say that happy birthday, Dan. Welcome to 25. You've been a quarter of a century here, and the world is better because of it.
Thank you.
I definitely am.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. Let's move on to the album that we talked about.
So we're talking about the 1967 classic record. I feel like I have to call it a record.
It is a record. Yeah. Don't disrespect it. It's not an album. It's a record.
Yeah, it's a record.
1967.
1967. Aretha Franklin.
Yeah.
Her album. I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You.
Everybody clap it up for the GOAT, huh? Clap it up for the GOAT, Aretha Franklin.
Man, this was an album that I was not familiar with outside of respect.
Yeah, me neither. Listen, first of all, the funny first point I want to make about this album is that every time I went to like search it, I was like, never love. It's definitely the longest name album we've
Yes,
gone
and
over.
we've been getting longer. Like we started with
yeah.
Rumors, and then now, I mean,
We've
we
been
did
getting longer.
Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. It's like it just keeps getting longer and longer. I feel
now
like
it's never loved a man the way that I love you last night.
I mean, there's this thing with like 2000s, like mid 2000s kind of emo punk bands where they would have song titles that were like sentences, just like so long, and that's what we're getting into now.
Yeah, Aretha was the beginning. She was the start.
She was the start, and this was the start for her, not literally, because it was not her first album and it was not her fifth album. It was her 11th album.
Yeah, crazy, right?
In like 7 years. I mean,
exactly.
So we talked a little bit about this before with other artists and albums, but it was more common to put out stuff like more frequently, like in the 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
So it can be compared to today, but it's just a different landscape today.
And you said 7 years. I think that's being like very generous. Like, well, not generous. What's the opposite of generous? Like that's being very conservative about like.
Oh yeah.
About what she really like, because she was doing stuff even in the 50s with her dad. But going back to like what I knew about the album before, I knew nothing about the album. Only thing I really knew about recordings of Aretha Franklin were obviously Respect that we talked about earlier, and then also Lady Soul, which is another album. And I knew that because of Questlove had this like list of albums that he did a list from of an album every year that was like impactful for him, and Lady Soul was one of them. So I remember I like listened to that a lot. And so like that's the only like full album recording that I've listened to of Aretha Franklin before last week. And so it was cool to like hear it. And when we chose this album, I didn't know like all the kind of like the what led up to this, or like the lore around it, or really what Aretha's like history was. I didn't really know anything about it.
Yeah, I was, like I said, I was really only familiar with the song Respect, which is a huge, I mean, it's beyond a hit. It's one of the most, and I don't think I'm exaggerating based on how I personally feel about it and how also a lot of people feel, is that it's just one of the most important songs of the 20th century. Like I don't feel like that's exaggerating, because of how it ended up becoming an anthem basically for the civil rights movement and the women's rights movement. So
and the other thing I knew about Respect is like the first, like, what's your first memory of Respect? Let me just ask you that.
Man, that's a great question. I don't actually, it was definitely late middle school, early high school, somewhere in there, but I don't remember if it was from a movie or a commercial or from.
Yeah, that's another, we talked about Stevie like had so many songs that are in movies. This song, the first time I actually remembered like acknowledge it as a thing was 2005. Are We There Yet? Do you remember that movie, Are We There Yet?
Ice Cube. And who else was in that?
Nia Long was in it. Nia Long was the mom. That's like do you know Nia Long? I don't know if that's like a Black culture thing. It's like she was the girlfriend of Will in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Oh, okay.
And she's been in a bunch of stuff, but like that was the thing that you probably know from. Okay. Yeah, Nia Long was the mom in that. And then I don't know the kids, but that's how I just remember like there was a karaoke moment. The girl like this is when, like her and Ice Cube finally bonded because they were like stepdaughter, stepdad vibes, And so like she's at a karaoke thing and she starts singing to like calm a crowd down or something like that. And she's like, "What's your name?" And it's just Aretha Franklin's voice, but she's singing. And like it was like a really cool part of the movie or whatever. But that's how I remember it. I was like, RESPE? What is that? Because you guys gotta think, like, I know you guys think like me and Dan are both 25 now.
Yeah.
But 2005 was like
We were
15
10.
years ago. So we're like, yeah, we were like 10. Like, I guess that didn't help my case. I could spell by 10. Never mind. But it was like
you were in like 5th grade going.
man, let's be honest though. Like
A-R.
10, 10 is the age where like when people spell stuff in songs, you're like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like the age where it's like starting to like put it together. I remember like when Fab, he's like a rapper. He used to spell fabulous, and like he's responsible for so many people spelling fabulous wrong because he just says it wrong. And so I remember that. I was like, fabulous. What's the other one? What's the other really big song that they spelled?
The alphabet.
Okay, so that was how that was how I was introduced to respect. Like that's the first thing I ever remembered that. And like I mean I knew Aretha Franklin in the canon of like it's like Aretha, like Patti LaBelle, like Shaka Khan, as far as like these like these trio of female singers from Aretha's a little bit older than both of them, but like from that era, you know what I mean?
Sure.
They're kind of grouped together.
Did you know any of these other songs? Other than
that are on this album.
Mm-hmm.
I knew Change is Gonna Come.
Yep.
And I knew there's another cover she does.
Sam Cooke. She does Good Times of Sam Cooke's.
No, Good Times Roll. That's Ray Charles, right?
I think it's Sam Cooke. I think Ray did it.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm about to look at it right now. Hold up.
Are you sure?
Show credits. Yeah, written by Sam Cooke. Huh. Okay, so maybe you're right. Just Sam. So Sam Cooke wrote. She did 2 Sam Cooke songs.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So actually, that kind of gets us to looking at her like history a little bit.
Yeah, let's give some history a bit.
So she began singing as a kid. Like in her church. Her dad was a minister.
C.L. Franklin, Reverend C.L. Franklin. This guy was like no joke either. Like he was like one of the more progressive like pastors in the Baptist. Like, were you about to talk about this? I don't want to cut you off if you were.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
He's like in the Baptist church. He was like the first person to like have like a radio show, like where he would like where he would broadcast.
Was way ahead of his time.
Yeah, way ahead of his time. But he was broadcasting his services on the radio. He was making albums. Like people weren't really doing that in the way that he was at that time. Also, like he was like one of those pastors that were like that kind of like was ahead of his time in that he wasn't so like afraid of secular music or secular artists.
Okay.
Like I remember like one of the brothers would say that he would wake up in the middle of the night and he would hear like an upright bass and like a piano, and he'd go in the living room and it'd be just Oscar Peterson just playing jazz in their living room. like his dad was like a cultural, like C.L. Franklin was like a cultural figure in the church and in the community to where like all the artists like Sam Cooke, you know what I mean? Like I know you're about to talk about him, Sam, and just like other people would just be in the living room, just hanging out at their house. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. Is he was kind of just friends with the who's who of musicians, politicians,
right,
famous figures, including Dr. Martin Luther King, and then singers like Jackie Wilson, Sam Cooke. So Aretha was introduced to these people not just when she was like 20, but when she was like a kid.
Yeah.
And so she was, young gospel singer, and she would like go out like during the summers and like kind of tour the gospel circuit. And she would like stay with Mavis Staples' family, So I mean, all those people. She and Mavis were like a couple years apart, so all those people were like together. I mean, close,
right?
And that was really that informed her like early career. I think
you got to understand though, like this is like 50s, like even 40. Like she was born in 42, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like 40s, 50s, like this is not like a good time for Black people to just be traveling around the country. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's not like how it is today. So you had to have, and Dick Gregory, who's like a comedian and just all around like icon in the Black community, and should be just universally an icon. But he was talking about how like the churches kind of served as the the like the way to like you could go to a like if I she's in Detroit, right? So maybe she goes down to Chicago, and so a pastor from Detroit would like tell her like go to this place, go to this church. They're gonna like take care of you basically. And
Right.
so they would go to this person, and that pastor would take care of them while they're in Chicago. And when you go to the next place, you'd have somebody else. So it's like that same idea kind of transferred with like maybe the Staples and like all the people she was talking about. It's like you take care of the people that come to town because it's like you gotta have you couldn't just be out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because if they weren't kind of helping each other, then they might run into people that didn't want to see
Exactly.
them.
Exactly. So it was like a cool thing for them, but then it was also like a necessity. I just kind of wanted to highlight that too.
Yeah, that's good. That's a part of that history that can very easily get kind of whitewashed and like, oh, everything was great, blah, blah, but
Yeah. Oh,
that's
they were
not
all
really.
friends, and it's like, yeah, they were. I'm sure they were, and they liked each other. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So, yeah, that's good to mention. So by the time she was only 16, she was like starting to tour with Martin Luther King a little bit. Like he would go and speak, and she would sing at the events
yeah,
and stuff. And so all that to say, including the Sam Cooke thing. Um, I mean, it was her path to be a singer and to be a musician
yeah,
for a long time, and it wasn't just like this pipe dream of like one day I'll meet the. I mean, it like her
yeah. One day I'll
family.
be under the big lights. No.
Her family was one of those families
Yeah,
during that time. So, really interesting to kind of know that leading up to, how would if you only knew that she got signed to Columbia Records when she was 18, you'd be like, well, that must it's
yeah,
just because she's a great singer, which is true, but
yeah.
it's also because of connections and stuff.
It's always like
Um,
that.
yeah,
And
that's what it has to be.
what now? I didn't dig into this, so maybe you know a little bit more. Like, what happened to her mom? I know her mom left at a certain age, and then she like passed away. Like,
Yeah, I know that her parents split up
yeah,
when she was still a kid, and I think she moved to like Buffalo, New York.
but no,
And
we don't really know why or what.
I don't remember why
Okay,
specifically, but I do know that she had a heart attack when she was like in her 30s, and she died when she was in her 30s, her mom.
dang,
So yeah, she didn't have much of a motherly figure for most of her life.
right,
And so some of those other families and singers like Mavis Staples, although she was more of an older sister, but like I think
yeah.
Dinah Washington and a
They
couple
said,
other.
I can't remember the name of the other person. They said uh, that was like really a part of her life.
Someone Ward, Clara Ward.
Yeah, Clara Ward. Yeah, that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So she had some other, I guess almost more like aunts, like that were kind
right.
of motherly figures in her life. We kind of skipped over this, but the hook. What is like the hook of this album for you?
Yeah, so I think the hook. I think the hook is that 1967 never loved a man. Wait, never loved. Wait, what's the title? Dude, this is me every time I try to search it.
I never loved
Loved
a
a
man the way I love you.
Never loved a man the way I love you is considered her breakout album. It's considered the album that it's like the first album that mattered for her.
Yes.
Uh, kind of like in the public, you know what I mean? Had like smashes on it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It like really catapulted her. And look at me using the music words. Really catapulted her into the eyes of what do they say? White America.
Bro, my hair is killing me. I gotta go fix my hair really quick.
Is it okay? Yeah, fix it. The hook of this album, like the main idea, like I guess the most important thing about this album is the fact that this was the album that kind of like launched her. Well, it was kind of like the album that it was like her breakout album. I guess that's what you would say. Like it's the album that she had been working for 10 years before that on Atlantic Records, on I'm sorry, not Atlantic, on Columbia Records, and she hadn't really gotten the type of hit that she wanted. She hadn't really like got the kind of respect that she wanted. So it was like she kind like when she 1967, she signs to Atlantic. This is
Yeah.
like her album. It's like this is the one for her, where everybody's like, oh, she's here.
Yeah, and I think her years at Columbia could be pretty much summed up as a record label trying to make someone something that they're just not really,
Yeah, Columbia.
like Columbia.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. They were definitely fumbling the ball a lot. Like they
Yeah.
were trying to make her a jazz singer, and then they were trying to make her like a pop singer. Like she was sing. I saw a recording of her singing some song, and I was just like, wow, why would they do this to her? Like I
Yeah.
can't remember what it was, but it was like this is. It's like it, you know, it's easy for us to see from that. See from like now 2020 like what she did, but it's like she should be singing the stuff that she came up with. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like she should be singing in that style of music.
Right.
And I
Yeah. I mean,
think
that's her voice. Her voice is, I mean, it has real. And I hate to say this because this is like, oh, she's a black singer. She has soul. But I mean, her voice
no, I
is
mean,
just, it's really soulful. And
the queen of soul.
you feel the power and the dynamics behind her voice. And it's like, if she's not singing with power and dynamics, it's not going to sound right.
As a vocalist, the thing that I admire the most about Aretha Franklin's voice is the subtleties. Like, of course, like you're gonna hear the power. Like the power is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, uh, she is extremely clear with every single thing that she does,
Mm.
and she can do like runs and things like that. But it's not really about that that impresses me. It's the fact that everything she chooses to do, one seems like it's on purpose. But you can't say that for a lot of other singers. A lot of singers are just singing what feels comfortable. She
Mm.
seems like she's doing what she wants to do on purpose, and everything is so controlled. Even the small little characteristics of her voice, those things are like under control.
Yeah.
She knows what's happening. It's not a game. Like she's not opening her mouth and like assuming something good will happen.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Man. Yeah. I think I just, as far as like the hook of
Yeah.
the album for me, like, I mean, I hate to be overly simplistic, but my hook
No,
was
do
literally
it.
just respect, like in all caps with
Mm-hmm.
like 3 exclamation mark, because that's what she demands, not just from that song, of course, but from I think the whole album.
Yeah.
And I think you can feel her maybe frustration with how her career has gone so far.
Yeah.
She hasn't really had um, and we talk a lot about chart success. Not everything is about chart success. Like there's
Yeah.
great songs that aren't top 40 singles, right?
Of
But
course. It's just how we had to measure it right now,
yeah, but
how we have.
as far as her um just recognition amongst, I think, the music elite, like she wasn't there. And I think, I mean, if
Yeah.
you're that good, like if you have that good of a voice, I feel like you have to know, like
Yeah.
deep down, you have to know, like, I'm not getting the respect I deserve, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Let's move on to the mandatory listen. Jay Wexler is the producer for Atlantic Records.
Yeah, and
Stop me.
I believe the co-owner of Atlantic.
Didn't know this. So he's the co-owner and producer of the thing that I like kind of picked up from like watching documentaries and just kind of doing like general research is that he was the first person that really understood her sound and understood what to do with what she brought to the table.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like, of course, like anybody that heard her was like, she's amazing. But I think people just didn't know what to do. And so he was like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get you singing like in this type of style, like these types of songs that really like reflect who you are, reflect something like personal about you, because she's like a big personality. You know what I mean? Like she's like living life to the absolute fullest. Like she had 2 kids by she was 17. Like that's right?
I
Like
think so.
she had 2 kids like really really young, and like we kind of skipped over this, but she kind of rebelled against the church. You know what I mean? And started singing secular music when her dad was this huge famous pastor, and so
Right.
it's like she is like really making stuff happen at such a early age, and so she had personality. She always did, all the way up to her death. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She like huge person. So whenever Jerry's like, he noticed that and was like, okay, we need to do this. So she starts writing some of her own songs for this session. She brings them to the table. she basically brought in the songs that they were going to do.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I got the vibe reading about this album that she was just in control, like you said. I mean, she was, but not only just with what she was doing, but for example, on the first song, Respect, she was like helping arrange the song and like telling the rhythm section what to do. And I mean, it was like she had the idea in her head and she was letting everyone know what the idea was. It wasn't as much of a, Jerry Wexler's telling her what to do or whoever else,
No, no. I think you just gave her the freedom to do it. You're like, okay, we trust you. Like, do your thing.
I think they said, or she said like Atlantic and Jerry basically just said, like, play the piano and sing and like do your thing. Like, we're not going to tell you much else.
Right.
We're going to give you more instructions. Like,
and it's weird. And it's weird. Like, I think there's like a pattern with her. Like, there were a bunch of men that were like trying to tell her what to do. Like, especially her husbands. She just kind of had like somebody said she had like a bad history of like bad luck with men. Like, she just chose these dudes to like manage her that were also her husband, and it just like never really worked out. It was like never a good thing. But every time she had the chance to just do her own thing, she would be killing it. And that's kind of evident in this album.
Yes, it is, and it's evident in the recording process. For example, they started recording down at Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals, Alabama.
Yeah, which is why we even chose this, right?
Yes, that was a connection from our last episode. Paul Simon, Still Crazy After All These Years, had some of the same Muscle Shoals musicians.
Right.
As from a drumming perspective, Roger Hawkins is the one who played on Still Crazy After All These Years, and he played on Respect, and so he's one of the main kind of connections there.
Yeah.
But so they started recording, and also I have to mention this too. They recorded this in January and February of '67, and they put it out in March of '60. So they literally put the album out like 2 weeks after they finished recording it, which again, that just goes back to the thing of like the industry was different. Like you were just cranking stuff out sometimes. So but yeah, so they started recording there, and they recorded it's like, what's the song? I Never Loved Man the Way I Loved You.
Yeah.
And started recording Do Right Woman, Do Right Man. So those were the first two songs, and they're, things are going okay. But then during the recording of that second song, like on the second day or third day or whatever, her husband, Ted White, got into an argument because Ted thought that Ken Laxton was his name. Ken was being a little bit too friendly with Aretha, kind of flirting with her. The problem was that Ted was her husband and her manager.
Yeah.
And he just, they got divorced a couple of years later. I think it was clear that he had some like control issues. He was abusive towards her, which doesn't really, it's not really like the story of this album, but it is, I mean, it's a factor behind how she's maybe releasing some of that tension, right?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so they get into this argument, and then the producer and co-owner of Fame Studios down there, Rick Hall, he kind of got involved, like trying to, break it up at some point. So the energy was just not good anymore down there. They needed to get out of there. And so they moved everything up to New York at the Atlantic Recording Studios. They finished the album there, but still pretty quickly. I mean, it was still just a few weeks.
Do you know how many songs they recorded up there? Like, how many did they record in Fame?
To my knowledge, from what I was reading, it was like they did like 1.5, and then like
that's what
everything
I thought.
else.
It was like 2 songs basically.
Yeah, everything else was in New York, which
So
I was a little bit surprised.
So it was Respect and the other
no,
one?
it was I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You, the title track, and then they started recording Do Right Woman, Do Right Man.
Okay.
And then Respect was, I think, the first song that they did once they got to New York.
Okay, gotcha.
But they flew in the same guys, like the same musicians.
Oh, okay, that's what I was wondering. Okay,
yeah.
so it was the same guys.
It was interesting, like, because you're getting actually kind of the Paul Simon thing. You're getting the Muscle Shoals musicians, but in New York, and most of the album was done in New York. And a lot of that again was just Atlantic. Jerry Wexler had his engineer Tom Dowd, who we'll talk about a little bit more later. They were kind of established at this New York studio in Manhattan, so
right.
They had a place. It's like, all right, let's do it there instead.
I feel you, man. Yeah. I'm gonna ask you a question.
Go for it.
So you're listening to this album for the first time. I'm sure like you listen to Respect jumps out at you. You're like, yeah, nice. What's your first like reaction to listening to the record?
The whole record?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. My first reaction was I hate. No, I was kidding. My first reaction was like cool.
Yeah, that's exactly how I was when I heard it for the first time. I was like, okay, that's nice.
Yeah, and I think that's because most of my familiarity with Aretha and her music up to this point has been very much in the background. Like,
yeah,
it's
for sure.
Or it's in a commercial, like we said,
yeah.
Or I might even be listening to it.
Yeah,
but it's still just not. I'm not like really like, oh, what's going on here and here.
Right.
And I don't know why that is really, but I would say that's kind of. I'm just gonna keep being honest. That's how it is for me with a lot of like definitely 50s, but even 60s kind of Motown stuff. Like I really haven't like dug deep into that world yet.
Oh, me neither. That's why I want to do some of that stuff on this podcast. Matter of fact, it'd be cool if we could do like a Motown like series where we're just like really get a hold of Motown, so we just know like everything, or like not everything, but at least we have like a grasp. So somebody like, to me, and I shouldn't be admitting this on YouTube because this is gonna last forever. But like when you talk about like all the groups, you know what I mean? Like they all are just the same group to me.
Yeah, the Platters and the Supremes and the
Yeah. 1 second.
Wow.
Hey, what's up?
Wow. So I think
so like after the first, like you listened the first time, it was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
I had the very same reaction. Like I listened to it, I was like, yeah, I was like, oh, it's cool. I connected to it a little bit more because it really reminiscent of the gospel music that I grew up listening to and like playing. And so like that type of singing, I was like, I get it,
Mm-hmm.
That was something weird happened to me though. I forced myself to keep listening to it. And like, really just keep diving in. And what I'll do now, like now that I'm like listening to albums, I've learned that I'm starting to listen to it a little bit different. Not now that I listen to albums, but now that I'm listening to albums that I don't know like every week, like, you know what I mean? I'm like forcing myself to find something in a song that I connect with. It's just like one thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for instance, on I think it's Baby Baby Baby.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part where the background singers might be the MVPs of this album.
Oh, 100%, dude. I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah, the background singers are killing it, but there's a part where they go, I'm guilty, I'm guilty, I'm guilty. I'm just like, oh, yes, I am guilty. I'm guilty. Man, I'm sorry.
We have to say this too, like the who the background singers are. So 2 of them are her sisters,
okay,
Irma and Carolyn. And she was the middle sister, so one was older, one was younger. And then the third background singer was Sissy Houston.
Oh yeah, I knew this.
Whitney Houston's mom.
Yeah, I knew that. I didn't know. I forgot, but I knew that. So yeah, I tried to find something like in every little song, and then I was like, oh yeah, every song has something that I really, really like in it. And after I did that, it just opened up the song to me. Because I think what slowed me down was I was like, oh, there's a lot of blues in it, so it sounded like a blues album. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not really there's really not song structure. It's not like verse, chorus, verse, chorus. In fact, there aren't really choruses like that.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
Now that you say that, yeah, I didn't really think about that, but
like, what's the chorus in Respect?
Yeah, I mean the hook of the song is really the RESPECT, but that's not the chorus.
Yeah, and that happens once.
Yeah.
That happens once. It's like it starts off with like a 4-bar intro, and then it has verse 1. What you want, baby, I got it, right? And then it goes like short instrumental, goes straight into verse 2. I'm about to give you all my money, right?
Right.
Guess what? Maybe that's verse 3. I don't know. But then then does an instrumental. Then does verse 3. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's like there's not really a chorus. And then when you get to blues songs aren't really, they're not really choruses in those. It's like you'll say something and then there's a tag, and then you'll say something and there's a tag. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
the form was very different. You know what I mean? She wasn't singing songs like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And do you mind if I go on a little thing about Respect the Song? Because
Yeah, do it.
I just like I don't want to, like, the whole album is good. I mean, we haven't even
Yeah, yeah.
gotten to that, like how we feel about it. But I mean, this song, I I thought a lot about how I want to talk about this, because, or
Yeah.
not like lost sleep over it, but I just was like, I don't want to be that guy that's just like, the only thing I take away from this album is that song, because it's the most obvious one to take away.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of like details about this, that I find interesting and important.
Yeah.
So
There's a
first of
reason
all,
why it's an iconic song.
yeah, yeah, and there's, I mean, several reasons really.
Yeah.
So first of all, it wasn't her song,
Mm-hmm.
except it was. You know what I mean? Like,
Nice.
she made it her song.
Yeah.
It was originally written by Otis Redding, who
Otis.
is great in his own right.
Yeah.
And but he wrote that in 1965, so a couple years earlier.
Right.
And it did pretty well. It was moderate success for him. But when Aretha recorded it, it was like, I mean, first of all, they did change a couple things, like the lyrical
Yeah, of
perspective,
course. Yeah.
of course. But the arrangement situation was, and this goes back to the background singers being important, and the rest of the musicians too. But so it was recorded, at Atlantic Record, or Atlantic Recording Studios in New York,
Yeah.
on Valentine's Day is what it said,
Oh.
and apparently that was like the only day, because they basically did like 2 or 3 takes, and that was it. So again, that's not as unusual as it would be now,
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
but still, for it to just be done like that, and then it's for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's crazy to think about that.
It is.
I believe only this song, the producer situation is kind of weird here, because
Yeah.
it's Jerry Wexler, and he's a producer, but he's also like, he's co-started Atlantic Records,
Yeah.
and then there's Rick Hall down at Fame Studios, but then they left. So this song, at least, was co-produced by a guy named Arif Mardin,
Uh-huh.
and he, like, basically arranged this song, Respect, but it was based on Aretha's ideas.
Right.
So that's kind of where that came from. But he wasn't
Yeah.
really like producing the whole album for some reason. It was just this song.
Right. Right. And I think producers kind of have like a different role back then than they kind of do now. Like,
That's true. Yeah.
they to me, and listen, take this with a grain of salt, because this is not me doing like a whole bunch of like research on what producers did in the 60s. But to me, they were more of like managers, kind of like the same way like a classical recording has producers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they just kind of like manage the whole session, make sure everybody's there on time, like, not on time,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean, like,
You're late.
they're basically the boss of the session.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Like, now it's like more of like strictly creative thing. Like, there's no boss really with producers now.
Right. Yeah.
It's more of a creative thing. But back then it was kind of more of a machine type of, you need to get in, record it, get out, or like get in, and I'm sure like the people knew about music. They're like, well, this needs a little like a hook here. Do this, or arrange it this way. And I'm sure some were more musical than others. But I think that the producer in that time is kind of the same role as the executive music producer now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when you have an executive music producer, that's literally like, they probably didn't work on the songs that much. Maybe they did, but maybe they probably didn't. They were kind of just like an overseer of the whole project and everything. Like how it's released and like everything like that. So,
well, it's a good way to put it. Like, it was more of a kind of machine.
Yeah.
Like we said, I mean, this was not a long process of recording this album and putting it out, and that's just how it was.
Yeah.
And so that is reflected in who is working on it, how they're working on it. It's
right.
It's a lot different. So
Back to
I'm glad
respect,
you.
like you were talking about.
Yeah. So she had been performing the song for the last couple years, or the past couple years,
Yeah.
since Otis had written it. And it was a part of her live show, and I think it was, in the process of getting worked out. So that's why a lot of the arrangement ideas were really more from her, and then Arif came in and kind of maybe fleshed them out a little bit more, or helped
Yeah.
kind of be a guide in the room while they were
Yeah, of
recording, that
course.
kind of thing. But there's a couple of things here with like specific details. So she worked out the lyric perspective flip with her sisters,
Okay.
the background singers
Yeah.
Carolyn and Irma, basically just to reflect the perspective of her and not of a man like Otis. The flip basically is what made it not just an anthem for the civil rights movement, but for the women's rights movement.
Yeah, and it still is.
And it still is, for sure. But that part of it didn't really catch on, I don't think, until a few years later, like in the 70s.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what gave it another second life.
Like another life, yeah. Second wind.
Second wind, yeah. So anyway, that she kind of worked that out with her sisters. So it was somewhat personal, to think of the song that way.
Yeah, of course.
And it's all informed by her real life too. So the part where she was like really in control, she was like apparently like instructing the rhythm section, like how to do the stops and starts, like in that section where it's like, R-E-S-P, like dun,
yeah,
da, da, and like I'm sure that didn't take too long, but it was just
the
fact that she was the one saying it, and not like the drummer was like, all right guys, here's what we're gonna do, like
yeah. No, I think like she played piano, so that was one thing. Like she was actually a musician.
Point, yeah.
We didn't talk about that, but she can definitely play. And so like she was playing it on her live shows and things like that. So when she was recording, she could lead the session. It was just a matter of like, was she getting the I hate to do this pun. Was she getting enough respect to like lead the session?
Yeah.
Both I don't know, like this aspect of it, both like racially and like gender wise.
Right.
Because it was like, what does this little black girl know? Like, how's she going? You know what I mean? And she's younger than all of them.
Yeah.
So like, but when you listen to the people, those players, they talk about her like she walked in and she was very like in control. Like when she walked around, she just like kind of walked around the session, and then like when she was ready to start, she just sat down and just started playing. And I think the drummer was just like, after she started playing that first song, I was like, okay, this is gonna be good. Like we're all gonna be great. Like she's amazing. We already knew that, but we didn't know how the session was gonna go. And then she just kind of just was like,
because
this is what's gonna be.
Because from their perspective, they're coming in. She's new to the label. They were kind of quoted as saying that like they knew who she was, but they definitely hadn't worked with her, and they really hadn't like listened to a ton of her songs because they hadn't been on the radio as much and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Now I have a couple quotes that tie directly into what you just said. So one of them is Jerry Wexler himself, kind of talking about the album as a whole. So he said, when we recorded the sides in this album, there was one unvarying reaction. And I'm going to pause here and say, these producers can be a little bit dramatic with what they say, but
they are, man. I love it.
So like documentary style,
As soon as she walked in, we all knew. She's just, you could hear a pin drop.
There was a glow coming from the doorway when it's like, okay,
and Jesus arrived.
Like one unvarying reaction. I'm sorry, I'm not going to analyze what he's saying, but so he said there was one unvarying reaction. Every time Aretha began a song, the musicians would shake their heads in wonder. After each take was completed, they would rush from the studio into the control room to hear the playback. Producers, engineers, and musicians alike were entranced by Aretha's purity of tone, her tremendous feeling for inspired variation, and her unparalleled dynamics. Now, again, that is a strong statement. That is a statement that he made afterwards. Was he saying that like literally then? I don't know. But
who knows? Yeah.
who knows? But I mean, even if you tone down what he said into like maybe a more, what a real person might say. I mean, it's still like I believe that
Yeah,
she
yeah,
had
no.
like control and power in the room.
There are people that are like that. When they walk in rooms, you pay attention. There are people you like when you walk in, you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
somebody is here, even if you don't know who they are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There are people that just have energy that just commands, like commands attention. Like whatever they're gonna say is important.
Yeah. So I have one more quote from one of the
Yeah.
musicians, Spooner Oldham, was
That's an Alabama name. I can say that because I was born in Alabama.
Spooner, man. That is a Southern name. He played piano, but once he basically realized that she played piano, he was like, okay, she's gonna play piano, and I'm gonna play like keys and organ and other auxiliary things. But his quote was kind of from a musical perspective, not just like, the producer coming in talking about it. Like he said, we all felt we were onto something new from the perspective that she was bridging a gap in a way that hadn't been done before, bringing rhythm and blues into pop and into the mainstream. It just crossed all boundaries, all genres. It was like, wow, this is different. This is transcendent. So again, I almost want to believe, not that I don't believe Jerry Wexler. I'm not trying to be like, oh, all producers are bad or whatever, but I almost believe more what he's saying because he played with so many people, especially then,
Right.
and he was actually a part of the creative process of playing with her and like knowing what that was like. And he was a pianist, and he's seeing her play piano and singing at the same time, which that can't be understated either. Like it's amazing that she can accompany herself
we don't really
and still
respect
sing
people
that
like
way.
That. Oh yeah, that is a tough thing to do. That's a tough thing to do.
And apparently she couldn't really. I mean, didn't want to.
Yeah.
I don't know, but she couldn't really do the like stand up and sing separately and then go and play piano. It was like it needed to be together.
Well, you're saying like she couldn't like play the stuff separately, like it had to be together.
So yeah, sorry, I probably shouldn't say couldn't, but she didn't
she
get
preferred
the same like
feeling
take out of either one,
Gotcha.
Which I'm sure that the others were fine with that because that was more efficient anyway. But she was like, whenever she was doing her singing, it was playing piano along with that too. So last thing I wanted to say about Respect, I know I'm spending a lot of time on this, but it's because it's a very famous song. So the last thing about it is, according to Tom Dowd, who was the engineer of the song, it was Carolyn Franklin's idea to spell out respect the way they do. So it wasn't Jerry, it wasn't Aretha, it was her sister's idea.
Oh, you need just to like do that idea, like
I was just like, I was surprised in a good way that it was Carolyn Franklin's idea to do that because, there were other arrangement decisions that were important, but I mean that is the most iconic part of the song and what makes it stand out from Otis's version. That spelling out thing. So I don't know, that I found that cool.
And then when you get to the next song,
it
starts off like that. And I'm like, oh, I already know I'm about to love it. And then she just like, this might be my favorite part of the whole song. She's like, it brings me or something like that, and then it just goes right into the.
How is this the first time that we've been like, oh yeah, you should like demonstrate something on keys? And
well, I just happen to have my piano here, right?
Oh, it just happens.
It just happened now.
Well, actually, I have my drums back here, dude. It would sound so terrible to play this.
But no, like when she does that, no, that's what it was. She says it brings big tears. That's so great. I don't know who wrote that, but whoever wrote that, like, have you ever had a big tear? Yeah, we all have big tears sometimes. And such a great word choice.
This is a very, very quick side note. So I don't really cry at movies or TV shows.
Or ever.
And I don't really, I don't say that to brag. I
Yeah,
actually
this is your
wish that
second time you said it in our podcast history that you don't cry.
Yeah, twice in 5 episodes. So I'm really sounding like a horrible person. But the thing is, like, I want to cry sometimes, and I
Me too.
just can't. You know,
When's
and
the
I'm
last
not
time you cried?
last night. That's what I'm saying. So only a little bit,
Yeah.
I'm not going to act like I was like bawling and like make it all dramatic, but I was watching. This is embarrassing, man. I was watching Sleepless in Seattle, starring.
You know what's funny? Never watched it.
Yeah, I mean that's okay. It's a classic, but it's not like.
I feel like I gotta watch that, and I really like rom-coms too. So like I should.
Oh man, I'm a sucker for rom-coms, and this is starring Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan in 1993. Here we go with the movie podcast again. But dude,
is this the one with the classic scene in the diner?
Oh no, that is also Meg Ryan, but that was When Harry Met Sally.
Oh, okay, my bad.
That's another classic. But dude, I shed a little bit of a tear last night watching, and I was like,
when Meg and Tom going down the street together at the end. Oh man.
Well, you should watch it.
When they break up, and it's just so sad, and then when they get back together,
and then when he's like, to infinity and beyond, is so good. No, so I just had to say, like, I actually literally last night, shed a little bit of a tear, and I was like, finally, dude, I finally cried at a movie, you know?
I don't think I've ever cried at a movie, but I had like a 10-year streak where I didn't cry. It's crazy. I can't remember what I was.
Is that over? Or is that still going?
It's over now. But it happened like I cried for the first time like 2 years ago, since I was like a kid. Like, you know what I mean?
The thing was, I was a real crier when I was a kid, so it makes sense. It's like
you got all of it out.
I got all of it out. Like, I dried up my cry valves, my tear valves. So back to what you were saying. I don't even. Why did I bring up the crying thing? Because we were saying
big tears.
Big tears. Thank you.
Big tears. Yeah. No. That it's just like from that moment on. After like it took me a couple of listens, but after a couple of listens, I was all the way on board with this album.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if this is I needed to know what to expect or something like that, but it usually takes me when I listen to an album for the first time, it usually doesn't hit me. That's why I loved Rumors so much, because the first time I listened to the album. But to be fair, I knew a lot of songs on the album first already.
Well, and I was the same way, and I admittedly didn't do as good of a job as I've done with our previous episodes, where I really spread it out throughout the week, like listening, you know, a couple times here, a couple times there. I didn't really do that this time. Like I listened the first time, you know, earlier on, and then I went a few days without listening to it, and then like 2 days ago, maybe even yesterday, I just listened to it like all day, over and over, and I didn't get tired of listening to it.
Yeah.
I thought I would actually, and
Me too.
I didn't.
I don't know if I can listen to it like 2 or 3 times in a row.
I listened to it 6 times in a row.
Jeez. Because I think the thing for me is that like hearing the blues that like this, it's just like a soulful blues type of gospel album. So that's kind of every song. Like, you know, there's like one like bossa type song in there. Like, was that what you would call it? Would you call it a bossa?
Yeah, it was kind of that. Like, definitely the groove was. Yeah.
Don't let me lose this dream. Also, another great vocal moment. And now to you. I can't even do it. She was like killing it.
Vocal moments are all over. Like, I Never Loved a Man, the title track. The way that she sings, there's so much like.
Yeah, how does that song go? I never.
You know, it's like the chorus is like it's just her for a minute, just like, and the phrase is getting broken up, and then the band comes back in, and it was like, yeah, it was just so well done, you know.
Oh yeah, and then it does like the break. I never loved a man the way that I love.
Yeah, I noticed like when I was looking up kind of the track listing, who wrote the songs. So Aretha co-wrote 4 of the songs.
Yep.
And what I found interesting was that they really kind of, I don't know if threw is the right word, but they kind of threw him like in the middle of the
Yeah.
album.
Yeah.
So Don't Let Me Lose This Dream, Baby Baby Baby, and Dr. Feelgood are all co-written by her. She also co-wrote Save Me, which is the 10th song. But I kind of felt if there was any noticeable kind of like kind of shape to like how I felt about the quality of the songs.
I wasn't feeling 10. I wasn't really feeling 10.
I wasn't feeling 10, and then
that's the only one for me though.
Dr. Feelgood I liked, but
it's very like non-structured. It's like
and there's that moment where they like again they're doing stops, and dude, the just for one or two of them, I don't know if it was Roger Hawkins playing or Gene Chrisman who was the other drummer, but dude, he got off on one or two of those hits, and it's like, couldn't you just have done like one more take? I noticed like, going from Baby 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 to Dr. Feelgood, it may have been the same key, but it was definitely the same like tempo and same like 6/8 kind of thing.
Yes.
And now again, I have to think of it as what did the vinyl do, right? So Baby 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 ends side 1, then you gotta like take a pause.
I'm glad you update us every week, because I've been like that. You've been making me think about that now. So even the point where like if like putting albums together, I'm thinking, okay, should we have a side A, side B, like side? Did you guys do that with Blonde Bones thing?
We did do that, but now like when you're generally speaking about like modern music, you don't have to think about it in that context because
people it helps.
It does help. I just mean like, for this, it's like you have to think about it that way because there wasn't anything else. There wasn't CDs, tapes, streaming. So we have 3 different songs on this album that kind of got, actually there were 4 singles. Baby Baby Baby, I believe, was released as a single, but it didn't really do as well.
I need you, I need you, I need you. That's my song, bro.
Yeah.
I have like a mandatory listening playlist. You guys, if you want it, just let me know.
Idea.
Yeah, and I just put like my favorite ones from every album on there in the playlist. So I've been making it.
This isn't a brag, but like I've just been so happy to do this podcast for a variety of reasons, but specifically because this is the 5th one we've done now, 5 albums, and they've all been at least like really good, if not great, and that's speaking about almost every song. I mean, like, there's really not there's only been one song that I've specifically kind of went in on, but every other, like, there's not been a single song that I've just been like, do I have to listen to this again?
Right. Yeah, it's crazy, right?
And so that's the hard part about this album too.
Yeah, that's the hard thing about the playlist. But I just try to do ones that like really make me feel something,
Yeah.
But yeah, Baby 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 definitely going on the playlist. Drown in My Own Tears definitely going on the playlist. Never Loved a Man definitely going on the playlist. I probably won't put Respect on it because I've heard it so many times. Now I'm just like, it just makes me just like, I don't know. But man, it's great.
I'm still, I still am just like, I just can't get enough of that song. It's like the groove is good, and the like everything is just like, it's just everything. It just came together.
I will say, like a change is gonna come. I don't know if like the original is so iconic and so perfect. It just doesn't do the same thing. It just doesn't do it for me, Like,
I know. Yeah, Sam's version. Also, Sam's version. Like, not that Aretha can't channel those same ideas, but Sam's version is at least loosely or partially based off of a real life incident.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was very like direct to him. But I agree. I think his version is, and that's what's so funny about like Respect is Otis's song. Like, but that's not the same scenario. And I think maybe he would even tell you that, like, he's kind of quoted as saying, like, joking around, like, this woman like stole the song from me. He'll say that like at his shows and stuff. But I mean, I think he knew that it was just undeniably like kind of her song.
Yeah. So if I had to put this on the playlist, I'm putting Drown in My Own Tears, I Never Loved a Man, Soul Serenade is good, but I don't know. There's something about it that I'm just like, uh, you know what I mean? It's great though. It's great. Um, I don't know. Don't let me lose this dream. It feels like it's just missing one thing that would make me like really, really enjoy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's great. It's great. Of course, baby, baby, baby's going on there. I'm putting Good Times. I love Good Times
That's a great one
on this album. The way like I love that song in general, but then she just kills it. Uh, not that huge a fan of Do Right Woman, Do Right Man,
Oh,
but
really?
you know, yeah,
Oh, okay.
not like a huge fan of it. And we both said Save Me. We could do without. But A Change Is Gonna Come. I don't think I'd put that on there either. But it's a good song. But yeah, I really love this album, man. Thank you for being on board with doing it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what we're doing is we're kind of, trading back and forth who picks the next one.
Exactly.
And it was your turn. I'm glad that we kind of went back to the 60s, kind of checked out what was coming before the other albums that we've done so far.
Can we talk really quickly? I know this has been going on for a long time
Oh,
already.
we're good.
I want to talk about how like this album sounds so different from like a Paul Simon album or from like any of the song albums from the 70s. Now I'm not talking about genre, I'm not talking about any of that, but just the idea of recording, right? And I was talking to Josh and I was like, why are like I get that like Sgt. Pepper's was the first concept album. Sgt. Pepper's is the first concept album, but like why is it what's the main difference? And okay, he was like, we're first of all, the songs are way shorter. And he was like, they're shorter because they were meant to be vamped live. He's like, at least for like the Motown songs. He was like, so that's why like when you go out, you hear the choruses going out. For some reason, when you hear a chorus fade out, that like relieves you of the pressure of doing a double chorus at the end.
Okay. Yeah.
Have you noticed that? Like
yeah.
there's no like you don't have to do a double chorus because if you fade it out, there's just like this assumption that it kept going.
And you don't have to come up with this ending that's going to sound good on the record.
Exactly.
All you have to worry about is the ending live, and you can do that the day of the show usually.
Exactly. Also, everything is like being recorded live, like in a live like fashion. So it's like the energy is the like the synergy between the players.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like the parts that we wrote. And I'm not saying that you don't write parts for these live things, but I'm saying like the cool part or like the the idea is like how does this feel between each other, like playing together in a live room.
Yeah.
And I think that's different from how like once you start to get on the concept albums and just studio albums in general, which happened in the 70s more, you get to like this idea of okay, we're hyper focusing on songwriting, we're hyper focusing on like how each song connects to the other song. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so like one of the things I'm curious about, and I want to just kind of make a mental note for both of us, is to keep track of like how albums are evolving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Another thing was like singing close up to a mic like this and like being able to whisper sing. But that's like a thing that doesn't really happen in these types of recordings because you have a band in the background and that's getting caught in the mic too.
Yeah.
So like if you listen to like D'Angelo 2000, he's like and he's like whispering and like singing very singing very small. You know what I mean? And so you catch those like those very intimate like things that you couldn't you capture that in the studio and isolated from everybody else in a way that you couldn't in those types of environments.
Yeah, so, I think that's I'm really glad that you mentioned all that. I also have a little bit of a passion for crediting musicians.
Yeah, I want you to do it because I haven't been.
No, it's okay. I just I haven't been doing it all the time, but I want to make sure I do that, especially with these records that I don't think we've done a band record. No, I'm just kidding. But the records that aren't band records where it's like these people recorded it and that was it.
Yeah.
Because it's like Aretha's name.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, these guys were definitely a part of history too, and like if they're not gonna get any love anywhere else, they can get it here.
So we got Spooner Oldham. We've already talked about him playing mostly like keys, organ stuff. two different.
Shout out to Spooner, man. He was doing his thing on this thing.
He was.
Not that he needs me to tell him, but love you, bro. Pause.
I'll give him a call after this. Two guitarists, Jimmy Johnson, and here's a name, Chips Moman. Not Chip.
Oh man,
Chips. I feel like I gotta move away from the mic.
Yeah, no, Chips, plural.
Chips Moman. And he co-wrote. I believe he co-wrote I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You, I think.
Noise. I'll look right now.
Okay.
Just keep talking.
Tommy Cogbill on the bass. And then we got two different drummers, like I said, Gene Chrisman and Roger Hawkins. Gene Chrisman, I think, was more involved with Stax in Memphis. And Roger was more involved with
Stax.
Shout out to Stax. Roger was more involved with Fame in Muscle Shoals.
Nice.
And, dude, Roger Hawkins, what's funny about him is, like, he's not really talked about, like, in the drumming community, like, at least from what I've seen and heard.
But here on Mandatory Listening,
we've already talked about him twice. And he's like, there's nothing, like, crazy, like, special about him. I think it's just that he was there and he was just getting it done, laying it down.
That's exactly what Muscle Shoals is. Like, nothing special there. I mean, it is special, but it's just like
nothing special.
Just did their jobs really well, you know, and they were just good at playing. They were good at playing with each other.
Yeah, good at playing together. And then the horn section, we got Melvin Lasty on trumpet and cornet, which is very similar to trumpet. Ken Laxton, our boy, on the trumpet. He didn't last too long because of his argument with Ted White. We got Charles Chalmers.
Yourself, Kenny. Sorry.
We got it's gonna take 20 minutes to get through this. You're like, hey, Ken.
All right, run it down.
I'm just kidding. But Charles Chalmers
Chucky.
And King and King Curtis were both on King Curtis. Yeah, and King Curtis wrote Soul Serenade, but he wrote it as a like jazz instrumental, and then I guess they put lyrics on it. Willie Bridges was on.
Big Willie
was on. You said Big Willie. He's on Barry sax. And then,
of course. Definitely Big Willie's on Barry sax. I'm sorry, Willie,
obviously, as he was called, Big Willie Bridges. Yeah, he got a little too big for his bridges.
Oh man, that was bad. No, put your cup down. You're gonna take the shame.
And then we've already talked about the trio of background singers, her two sisters, and Sissy Houston, who is Whitney Houston's mom. So that is the that's the band. I don't always do this, but I like double checked on like all music and on the Wikipedia page and everything. And like,
thank you, man.
That was it. Like there wasn't. I mean, that's plenty of people, but it wasn't a ton of people. Like there was no string section or anything.
Yeah. I don't have a 3-on-3, so I think it's gonna be free throws. Free throws for Dan today.
Free throws.
But to keep on with the tradition, we'll do the 3-on-3 echo in 3, 2, 1. 3-on-3. 3.
So I got to carry on the tradition. I don't have a ton, but I do have like one kind of big one.
Good.
And that is
Dunk.
The engineer Tom Dowd.
Oh, you said you're going to get to this.
Yeah. So Tom Dowd was a really, really important figure in like recording history. So, he engineered this album, and like we could probably run into him at other points too when we do this podcast. But so this is crazy. He's credited with innovating multi-track recording. So let's just let that sink in, because that's a huge concept.
Yeah, let's explain it for for people that know zero about music. Okay,
let's do it.
Like back in the day, like before this time, before 1967, even probably like before, like in the 60s, there was no way to really record like bass individually, drums individually, like microphones individually. And so what you had to do was you had to do them all at once, and it all got recorded onto a tape machine like all at once. So like whatever the levels were when they came in, it's just kind of how they are. Like you can't like you know what I'm saying? Like there's no real like tweaking one specific like there's no like well the drums missed a lick there, can we go back and fix no.
Yeah,
it's like whenever you recorded that was it, like that's all it was, you know what I mean? Multi-track recording is where I can be playing my piano and it's come through its own mic and I can manipulate the sound by itself. That's another thing. Like I couldn't like put reverb on guitar, but then later and then put delay on piano. Like it was gonna be delay and reverb on everything. You know what I mean? Unless you did it before you recorded in, you know. Okay, so that's like multi-track is like, okay, I can record and manipulate before and after every single instrument, you know, individually. That's basically what that's the very basic idea of multi-track recording.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. I'm glad you went through that.
Yeah, no problem.
So Tom was
such a courteous podcast. Thank you. No problem.
Thank you. If we were in person, we probably wouldn't do that, honestly. So he was the one who encouraged Jerry Wexler, who again was co-owner of Atlantic Records,
right,
to install this 8-track recorder in their studio in New York.
Yeah.
And I don't know when exactly that was, but it was definitely before Aretha was recording.
Right.
Because that was one of the things, that was another motivation for them to
go to
not just stay in Fame. Stay at Fame Studios was like, well, not only do we have our own place, but it's like multi-track recording and it's like top of the line. So that influenced the album too. But it kind of goes hand in hand. But he, you know, through the innovation of multi-track recording, he also popularized the use of stereo sound as opposed to mono sound. And you know, again, that's
this guy was like a scientist.
Yeah. I mean, he very much on the technical side of things was like, I mean, he was like one of not the only, but he was one of the innovators of the time, pushing things forward, not just like, well, I guess we can only do this. Like he's like,
no, like what's possible.
Yeah. And here's the most interesting one to me. I mean, that's like some huge stuff.
No, that's amazing.
But so he even pioneered the use. I love how I say pioneered. I never say that word. He even pioneered the use of linear channel faders instead of like rotary controls on audio mixers, because he was a pianist and he wanted to be able to, like, you know, when he's mixing, especially like real time mixing, he wanted to be able to like slide stuff individually, like up and down on the mixer, instead of being like this knob here and this knob here. So he his daughter Dana Dowd has this quote about it, is he was a piano player. He wanted to be able to play the console the same way he could the piano, with several keys in each hand. So with the knobs, you couldn't have more than one in each hand at a time. So he found a company that was making wire sliders, and he installed them into the console at the first Atlantic Studios. Like, he installed it himself.
That's crazy.
And she said, too bad he didn't patent the idea. So apparently he didn't. She's probably like, yeah, Dad, we could have been set. But anyway, that's like, so, I mean, it has to do with the album because he engineered it, but that's like a much bigger thing. You know, he was on the cutting edge of recording innovation. So
that's a really great one. That was a dunk. 10 out of 10. You win.
That makes sense. Just one big dunk.
One big dunk.
That's all we need today.
All right, bro. Let's take it to the next album.
So in past episodes, when it's been my turn to kind of choose one, I've had like a few different options. Today I only have two, and they're by the same artist.
Nice. So I like it. Give us the background story.
A little bit as far as, like, you know, choice of where to go.
It's okay.
The two albums I have are Whitney Houston, and they are her first two albums, which are Whitney Houston and Whitney. So that can be confusing. But so I am aware that
is
both
Whitney
of
Houston the
those,
one with where she's in a field with the okay.
Yep, that's the first one. She has
And
short
then
hair.
Whitney is the one where she has the blue cover, right? Gotcha.
And both of those are like crazy successful, like lots of great songs. Supposedly, haven't listened to it. I think what I want to do is go with the first one, because it was. I think it can be considered just as classic as the second one from what I've briefly seen.
Yeah.
And it's also, it allows us to like get into like the context of what led up to that, but then we're not going to yet get to all the later stuff with her because that could happen later in the podcast.
What year was that first one? Do you know?
85.
At 85, that late? Okay, crazy.
Yeah. So we're going to be.
So we're like post Thriller. We're like post Bad. Geez, we're like really into like pop land. Like Prince has already released Purple Rain.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I didn't know it was that late. Okay.
Yep.
Let's do it, bro.
Let's do it. So I think what we can do, and we've already definitely established that this is not a chronological podcast.
No.
But I think it could be very easy to go into 80s land. But I think what this could do is take us maybe back to like late 70s, get into maybe Michael Jackson and Prince and that stuff. But the connection really here is her mom Sissy was a background singer on Aretha's album, and there's just some similarities I think between the kind of like beginnings of Whitney and Aretha, like in terms of how they grew up, singing in the church and starting at a young age and that kind of stuff. So that's
for
where
sure.
That's where I'm going to take it.
I'm excited. All right, man.
All right,
give us an outro or something.
I still haven't really come up with an outro, but
it's all good, man.
We definitely appreciate you guys watching and listening and tuning into this podcast and supporting us. Please subscribe if you made it this far. And we will see you next time.
Subscribe, hit the notifications button so you can get that
mandatory. Listen.